everybody. My name is Shawn Jensen. I'm the Learning and Development Lead at Trainual, which is a company small company based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, that we help you to document your standard operating procedures and processes in a digital format, and also to help you to turn that into training content. So that's my background is in learning and development and instructional design. I've been in ed tech and now with Trainual for about a year, actually a year today.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hassan, you're up.
Great. Hello, my name is Hassan Riggs, and I'm the founder and CEO at Smart Alto. And over the past 3 years, I've managed a practically fully remote team of 50 plus people across 4 countries and 6 different time zones. And we ultimately doubled our business last year. So I think I'm uniquely positioned to talk about this because I run a venture-backed company, manage several employees across several different teams, across several different countries and time zones. And we've been pretty successful kind of driving the business forward. So I'm excited to share some of the really expensive mistakes that I've learned over the past couple of years, but also some really good wins. And sometimes the best wins can be those small things, because the small hinges sometimes swing big doors. So
I absolutely agree. And I will tell you the other thing I think you do, which I don't know if you've considered as part of your training experience, is you work with the agents implementing your software, which is another form of training.
Yeah.
And honestly, probably a lot harder to work with your agents than it is working with your team.
Yeah,
I would say, to get them focused enough to do what you are asking them to do.
Yeah.
And our real estate guru expert that has joined us, Jared, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Lisa. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm actually based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. For the past 4 years, we run a real estate team. We're about 10 agents and then a staff to support those agents. I personally specialize in systems and processes. I have a background in electrical engineering and a master's in project management. And so I love systems, I love analytics, and I love putting those to work in the background.
That's so exciting. I love it. I was looking for a real estate agent to join our conversation, and I was like, oh my gosh, Jared would be great with this. Because of the systems. So we're honored to have you. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Treu, and I'm the founder of 2 companies. One is our real estate company. We're a family-based boutique brokerage here in South Florida. And I say my passion business, it started, I don't believe in accidents, but it kind of started because I love something which a lot of us do, travel. And it's about travel, business relationships, and growth. And I am doing these type of webinars, as I said, for me, because I want to learn and grow, and also to share with people in Passport experience. And it is not just real estate agents, it's business owners, business leaders. So let's jump in. I had this amazing one-on-one event conference with training session with Shawn. And I thought my training was at least on the right track. I had started it. I had finally decided I was going to stop using the free stuff out there because it was hard. It didn't make me want to dive in and set up training. And I heard about Trainual and I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pay the money and use it because it's easy. It felt really simple for me. Shawn reached out and offered to take a look at my things and give me some insight. And of course, I jumped on it. And when that happened, hi, Steve. When that happened, we decided, I had some missing pieces because I am not a training education expert. I'm a real estate agent who is figuring all this out like everyone else. So Shawn, the first thing I would love for you to share that really made a huge difference to me was, how do adults learn best in the training process?
That's a good question. It's something that's been really fascinating to see over the years. So again, a little bit of the background that gets you there is I've been in ed tech for many years. So I worked a lot with kids. I worked a lot with grown-ups, and I taught a bunch of kids. I taught a bunch of grown-ups. I taught a bunch of grown-ups who taught kids, and watched all that happening all the time. And it was really fascinating to see how there are things that we do as kids that continue on in terms of how we learn stuff, how we learn and internalize things, and some things that kind of shift a little bit as we grow older as well. One of the things that I learned right off the bat is that as kids, we'll walk into a classroom, we're in our third grade classroom, and our teacher says, okay, today we're gonna do math, we're gonna do fractions, and we're like, okay. We're like, yeah, that's cool, that's what we're doing today, right? But as we get older, we have things like experiences and skills that we learned, and opportunities that kind of fuel our growth. So we get to this point where we're like, yeah, you know what, I kind of know stuff. I already know things. So one of the first things that is important when it comes to training adults and teaching adults is that we have to help them to understand the why, right? We need to know why we're going to do something before we will actually engage with it, or at least engage fully with it. And if we can engage someone right from the beginning by helping them to understand what the purpose and the value of what they're going to be learning, then we have we've got our hooks in a little bit better, and they will engage and keep it sticky on throughout the training experience, whatever that is, whether that's a day or multiple days or years of training opportunities. So
Love that.
yeah.
Love it. And I think a lot of us, those that know the DISC, the high Ds, the just get it done kind of people, sometimes don't get that, right? I received a couple of comments from people that either were in military background or just high Ds that just said, I just don't get it. Like, why don't my people just like get it like I do, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, they're not us. And I think that's been the hardest thing for me as a leader, is understanding that they're not me, and I have to align myself with them versus me going, well, just do it, figure it out, come on, So I loved, Hassan, what you said about some of your mistakes. When it comes to training, what are some of the mistakes or lessons you've learned that can maybe help us avoid some of those?
Yeah, when I was really kind of early in my leadership career, you see I have a lot of books behind me,
Yeah,
and
sure.
some of those books talk about time management, and I was a really big fan on kind of focusing on time management and trying to find out what worked for me, and then sharing those things with my team. As I evolved in my leadership style, what I realized is everyone manages their time differently. And I started focusing less on actual time management and rather on energy management, because we all have, I want my best, I want my best people to do their best work when they have the energy to do their best work. And we all have decision fatigue. It's the reason why Steve Jobs is famous for wearing the same thing every day. And so is Mark Zuckerberg, because we only have so many decisions that we can make in a day. And I want my best people to not focus on making really small decisions that kind of weigh them down. And as opposed to that, focusing on the most important things whenever they have time to do it. Because we've made a promise to one another. And ultimately, everything starts with a promise. I've made a promise to you, you've made a promise to me that this work is going to get done. I don't care when you get it done, just make sure it gets done, right? Because you have to
Interesting.
have timelines around that. And so that's one of, I think, the big things that I've learned over maybe the past 8 to 10 years, is that like some people are morning people, some people are afternoon people, some people, they're great. They absolutely got to have their coffee first before anything gets done. And other people may be a little bit later on in the day when they kind of can do their best work. But depending on the type of person we're hiring for a role, obviously there are certain times in the day when things must get done. But I want you to figure out when is the best time for you to do your best work. And that comes with an understanding that people focus, typically, especially in my company, people focus on whatever the CEO is focusing on, right? So whatever my goal, strategy, and metrics are, whatever I say focus on as a big picture, the North Star, that's going to be the thing that drives the organization forward. That's the why. That's the North Star that kind of moves the boat forward. And so as long as we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, then focusing on energy management rather than time management has been one of the big keys, I think, to progress for my team.
Wow, I love that. Energy management. It's interesting. I have a team member right now where I'm constantly having to tell her, you need to stop working. Like it is, I see you, because she also is virtual.
Yeah.
I am aware you're still working.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I mean, I love work ethic. I mean, I'm a farmer's daughter.
Yeah.
I love that, you know, early to bed, early to rise, the person that's just gonna give it, you know, honor the promise, right? And when things are tough, and look, let's face it, right now, most businesses across the world are having a challenging time unless you're in one of those key demand businesses. And I appreciate when a team member is all hands on deck with us, right? And yet also, and it's really been clear to me, when you have the right person in the right seat, you don't have to be saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Hey, are you logged out? You know, they're actually, it's the opposite. I'm having to say, okay, enough. You've done a great job today. I need you to go get some sleep, right? So tomorrow you feel the energy to do your best work. And it's been a big aha to see. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that weren't the right fit in our role, where we've made a mishire. But now that I've seen the right fit in it, the clarity is there. And I agree with you. I mean, she does work certain times because I need her there, but also she's working sometimes because, you know, she's in a different time zone. She feels more energy. So I think that's awesome. So Jared, I have a question for you. What, and I guess all of you could probably answer this at some point. One of the biggest challenges is eventually when you're staffing such a way where you either yourself or someone else is dedicated to training and leading and all of those things, I think that there comes a point in a business where that becomes someone's role or opportunity to feed back to their team members. When you're smaller and you're growing, you're trying to do that and all the other stuff, right? You're still in maybe production, or you're at least still leading and making business decisions, and you're trying to hire, train, lead, motivate. How does somebody get over that hump? Because I believe it's like a mountain sometimes to get over that. Like, Jared, how did you get there? Or did you just say, I'm going to invest in the people in the beginning? I'd love to hear kind of your journey of that.
No, and actually it's still a learning process for me too. And there's you know, just some really fresh experiences actually this week that I've been working with my coach. And yeah, I think it's a natural tendency for us to think like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build this on my own. I'm going to do it. And then eventually I'll be able to work myself into and have enough money to, you know, have have an assistant, have a couple people like a buyer's agent, or maybe I want to start bringing on somebody to do my marketing and stuff. And I think in my experience and what I've realized, and I'm starting to learn faster, I think I'm still learning, but I'll take this previous experiences, these last 3 to 4 weeks when we've all made this shift from really working a lot more virtually. I've always had the dream of taking all my investment classes and my webinar, I mean, not webinar, but my in-person classes. We do about 2 to 4 a month before all this COVID-19 happened. I'm like, how do I've always had this dream of putting it all online. And now I kind of kick myself because I did not allow myself to bring on the expertise to help me bring it online before this happened. And so, but, you know, forcefully, we were able to spend that first week all hands on deck as a team, making it happen, revamping our slideshows, picking the right webinar platforms. How are we going to deliver this? How are the ads going to look? And it wasn't just, I realized that I can't do everything on my own. If I do it on my own, it's very haphazardly done because I'm not 100% focused on what I do best. I kind of relate it to a messy room. I walk into the messy room and I don't know where to start. My wife has kind of taught me through some of her traits, is in like, look, every morning she writes down a to-do list. What's most important, all the way down to the least important. And I'm going to start with the most important first and work my way down. And so we kind of built that as a team and made it happen. But what I realized is we were still busy. We were still working 12-hour days trying to get everything done. And I realized I know I've always needed an office manager. I know I've needed somebody to help me keep everything organized, because operations and sales are two different things. And I love operations. I hate the training. I hate the sales. I don't know if hate's the right word, but what I'm trying to say is I really do like the operation side of things. I don't like the stuff that I could have used somebody as an office manager to do. And it took some, tough times for me to realize that. And the reality is in my head, I keep thinking, I can't afford it. And that was my big setback. Is I don't think I could have, I couldn't afford not to have it.
Yeah.
And then once I have it, things actually took off exponentially, because there was an expert, that I could rely on to take care of those things that actually helped our agents tenfold what I was giving them.
Interesting. So Shawn or Hassan, do either of you have any insight onto how somebody gets from where they are to where they need to go while they're trying to, look, juggle, we become jugglers, right? And I'm not a great juggler. Things drop. And honestly, leadership often is the thing that it's the easiest to ignore, because it's not shouting, right? Your buyers, your sellers are shouting at you. Your clients are shouting. The business stuff is shouting, but the leadership isn't. But it's the most important thing we should be focused on. What advice you have somebody who maybe they have a team, don't have yet the sales manager or the trainer, and they're just really struggling to give to their team, but also keep the business going?
Well, I'll jump in really quick. One of the very first things I'm always keen to suggest is that when we look at our employees, people that are doing the work that we've hired them to do, we need to see our employees as learners first, right? These are people that are there, they applied, they wanted to be part of your organization, and the very first thing they did was learn about you. And they want to learn. They want to learn how to do their jobs better. They want to learn, again, how to make your organization grow. And so when we have that as the central focus of, okay, our employees are learners, everything that we do from that perspective helps us to better inform them, help them to develop themselves into the roles that they need to be. So when we're looking at, Jared, you mentioned a couple minutes ago, there are things that you just, the operations side is, it's on the training side, like, that's not my thing. It's not my jam, right? Yeah. Is you want to find someone who's a champion and have them be the champion of learning for you. And I would say, I'd venture to say that's one of the most important things to have right at the beginning of any business. And certainly as you continue to grow, is have those champions of learning who can help and facilitate those opportunities and training, whatever that training ultimately looks like, so that everyone understands the why, again, like we mentioned earlier, but they have a clear path for and direction and motivation for that learning. So learners first.
Mm. You know, one of the things, just to kind of dive in a little quickly about that, is, you know, right now we're going through a pandemic and people are panicking, right? Well, first, there's never a great time to panic. Never. Right? There's never a good time to panic. And so, you know, although we have a mostly remote team, we have a couple of offices, but we have a mostly remote team. We could not just take, and so we were like really well positioned for this shelter in place, but we couldn't just take our current working structure and style and then place it into this new environment, because nothing is the same. Even the leaders who I have who are previously were working remote and at home, now they're working remote, they're at home, and they got kids at home. Right? So their mom or dad, also chef and homeschool teacher. So they're doing a lot of things. And so it's important during this challenging time, we lead with ETO, with empathy, with trust, and then outcomes. And so we have to rethink the way we think about productivity during this time. And that's why the person you have hired is probably like the most important thing. You mentioned it earlier, Lisa, making sure you have the like right butts on the bus, right? And so one of the things that has kind of frustrated me during this process is kind of taking a look at our industry that I love and seeing a lack of curiosity. Because when you have a lack of curiosity, you have this like lack of vision. And when you don't have vision, there's no plan. And without a plan, you're just hoping, and hope isn't a strategy. And so when people aren't curious in their role and they say, well, crap, the sky is falling and everyone is busy, you ultimately end up having to tell someone specifically what to do all the time in order to try to make sure they're productive. So now you're micromanaging, which is an awful thing to do, right? So that's one big mistake. But that now you feel like you're forced to micromanage. And then secondly, there's no way that you can account for all the different iterations that a person is going to come into on a daily basis to help them make the right or wrong decision, right? So you need to have good SOPs. Like we're starting from a place of you have good SOPs in place, but then there comes a time where you really need to give people principles to follow, because when you got the right person in the seat and they know the core values and the principles, they're going to do a great job at whatever it is that you've hired them to do. But when you don't have those principles aligned and you have a wrong person in the seat, you ultimately end up micromanaging them, which isn't good for you and it isn't good for them. You know.
Love it. Oh my gosh, that is so insightful. You know, it's interesting. I've been really thinking a lot about, I went to this seminar given by the Ritz-Carlton recently.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Yeah, great training.
And yeah, amazing. And talking about the empowerment that they give to their people, right? And I thought, okay, am I empowering my people, right? And I agree, it starts with the why. And then, you know, obviously if you're the right person, you can't empower the person that isn't in the right seat. But am I empowering my people, and what can I do to empower them? And part of it is, I think training is part of that empowerment, because they need to know what, but also the why. And we're having that a lot because, you know, a lot of our systems are very complicated and they take a lot of tedious, you know, watching videos. And honestly, I've been doing it. And I think one of my systems has 58 training videos. It's not necessarily exciting. and yet at each one, because I made myself do it, because I'm like, I don't need to do that. I can figure it out. I figured 90% out, but the 10% I've missed is important.
Yeah.
So I get it. I love that. Thank you for that. So,
You know,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I
John.
was going to say, you know, on top of the
Yeah.
training, I found that the other thing that I think is very important is the direction of that training, and having the expectations set for your team, for, you know, who you're managing and coaching. Because I mean, that's one thing that I kind of failed at when I first started, is I had a lot of people, they shared the same passion, they shared the same vision, but there was no direction or leadership, as in, okay, here's the training and here's the expectation of what you want. I kind of took it as, look, you guys are all agents. Technically, you're a 1099, you know, it's your self-employed type of thing, working on a team. But I failed to realize that they came on my team because they wanted that direction and they wanted the discipline that they weren't getting on their own.
Yeah, great point. All right. So I would say half the people that reached out to me said, what training? So we're going to like really go way back. We're going to go way back to, we understand the why, we understand the that. Now we need to understand the how. If somebody is starting either with something that is not well organized, or maybe they have absolutely nothing, what is the easiest way to start organizing and creating your training process? Because it'd be nice if there was a plug and play. Everybody's business is different. There's some maybe things we could share, but most of us kind of need to say, this is how we do this. So Shawn, let's start with you and kind of work down the line. What would be your tip for somebody that says, I have nothing, or what I have is just average? Where do they start?
So Hassan and Jared both mentioned this and as they were speaking, but I think one of the very first places you need to start is to determine exactly what someone needs to be able to do. That's where you start. Kind of starting with the end in mind, if you will. So if someone is going to have this job responsibility, what are the clear and measurable things that they need to be able to do when they're done with whatever training we're going to walk them through, right? That's a great place for someone to start, because it's taking inventory of the accountability, right? It's going, okay, this person needs to be able to do this and this and this and this. And it's okay if it's a long list, right? Because that allows you to kind of visualize, what is this training going to look like? How long is it going to take? How involved is it going to be? What types of learning activities are we going to have them to do? Application activities that allow them to practice the things that we teach. So starting off from the very beginning with that, again, that why, that purpose of why we're doing this, but then a very clear and measurable list of accountability objectives, targets, whatever you want to call them. That's a great place to start. Because once you have those listed and nailed down, you can work backwards from that and start building out the training, whether that's a set of modules or one day of training, or just something you do on a computer and a video. It makes it so much easier when you've started with the end in mind, those learning objectives.
Love it.
You know, what's really fun is we actually hired someone yesterday. And when we hire someone and we bring them on, they ultimately, like, I'm probably like one of the last people they meet now. It wasn't always like that. I used to do all of our hiring. I don't now, but I sat down with the young guy yesterday and went over a start plan. And we have a start plan for every role, whether it's engineers, product designers, sales folks. We always have a start plan. And that start plan has goals, strategy, metrics, resources. Goals, strategy, metrics, resources. Goals. Here's what we expect from you at a high level. Ultimately, here's the output that we would like to see, right? Strategy, here's how we expect you to get to that, right? Now that strategy, understanding that, like, so right now, Lisa, I'm in Washington, D.C., you're down in Florida. If I'm trying to get to where you are. First, I need to know kind of where I am. And then ultimately, I need to know where you are. It's a lot of ways I can get there. I can take a plane, I can take a car, I can take a bus. If I'm going to drive, I can go down 95, I can go 75. There's a lot of ways to get there, right? That's the strategy that you have. And it's really important that there's some guidelines around the strategy, and that strategy lines up with the goals, and the goals obviously line up with the values of the company, but also metrics. And the reason metrics are so important, because you can't move the goalposts on people. Folks need to know when they're winning and when they're losing, because we're all in business, right? You need to know when you're winning, when you're losing. You need to know what success actually looks like. That way, when your performance review comes around, you're not surprised. You kind of know, right? You know whether or not you're hitting your target. And as a leader, one of the things that we oftentimes try to do is move the goalpost on people. And we say, well, I thought that this is what you would be doing, or I thought this is what the output would be. And the problem with that is you've made an assumption. And most of the problems that happen when it comes to training, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to kind of leading a team, is you've ultimately made an assumption and you haven't communicated what you think or what you believe to be true. And the death is in assumptions. You should don't, we've probably all read the 4 agreements, right? Which is be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, always do your best. So following that 3rd agreement as a leader is really important. Don't make assumptions. And in order to make that true, you need to have clear metrics. Here's what winning looks like. And if you're not doing this, it's a lot of ways you can lose, but here's what winning looks like. And then here are the resources that you're going to have in order to hit your goal. And now now you have shifted the responsibility to the person you're leading to say, hey, boss, you haven't really given me what I need. And now it's my job to say, well, I'm either going to deliver on that, what it is that you need to do your job, or I need you to be to have some moxie, to be a little bit more creative. Let's problem solve on this in order to reach the goals with the strategy and ultimately know that you're winning or losing.
Love it. Oh my gosh. That is awesome. So Jared, what advice would you give to someone that says, I really don't have a clear structure, I don't even know where to start?
I really liked what you said, Hassan, because it really resonated with, I guess it took me back to my first year of, I led a field service team for a medical device company. And I remember I led it, and it came review time, and it came time to give out merits. And I did a very poor job of that because I gave it out to the people that I really could only think about what they were doing within the last month. And then I had one of my senior engineers, bluntly tell me, and he said, and he confronted me and said, how are you measuring this? How did you come up with this assumption? And it completely caught me off guard. It caught me like, it really set like, it really made me think about how I was as a leader. Was I, like, I felt embarrassed, like, given what I gave, and also reflected back to all my other employees to the point where, okay, next year, this cannot happen. And I have to set down right at the beginning when I hire them, and not just when I hire them, but set up weekly, every other week, quarterly reviews, like, how are you doing? Let's break down your goals. Let's look at them, and let's have an open conversation about them. Because if you're not doing something, that you can't read my mind and I can't read your mind. So these are the expectations, and this is how we're going to get through them. And let's talk about how we get through those, because we're all different. We all have in our heads how making that peanut butter and jelly sandwich looks, and how the process works, to the point where let's talk about it. And there's several different ways to do that. And let's hold each other accountable, not just me holding you accountable, but hold me accountable as your
For sure.
leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. I went to a seminar last year, and I'm sure you guys have either seen it or done it, but they gave us this, we did the spaghetti contest where you had to build the highest pyramid, and we all had the same things in the bag. And of course, our group, for some reason, I asked a question. I said, can we have the analyticals raise their hand? Like, you know, I would at least like to have it. Somehow on our team, we ended up with all my friends, which were all high Ds, all drivers. And the first thing, so just break all the spaghetti noodles in half instantly. No discussion, no plan, right? Typical D style. And that showed how, and we just could not figure this thing out, right? Like it was what we did, but it certainly was not the highest, which was the goal. And we looked around the room, and then watching the people that were thoughtful of the process and read the directions completely, right? They read that you could use everything, including the bag. We didn't, we just kind of threw the bag somewhere. And every single one ended up differently. There was not two in the entire room. So talking about how you could get, we all were given the same instructions, right? And yet there was a lot left to our imagination. And I think as a leader, if you can take away that part that's left to their imagination, because you wrote it, or you created the planning process, training process, and you say, well, of course, this makes perfect sense, right? So what I'm looking at now is I've written it, now I'm judging it, right? Like how, if people are struggling with the content, it's probably not it's probably the content, not the people.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I did one thing that because, you know, I'm all about leverage, because I think I can do everything. I'm just that person. Anytime I train on something, I record it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm training, I use Loom, which is free, which I
Right.
love.
Yeah.
Or I use BombBomb, or I literally put up a camera. So we brought in one of our support team members, our title company, and she explained the closing process. Now, I don't want her to have to do that over and over and over as we grow. I just put a camera up and we recorded it. We did the same thing with insurance, and all that content is going into my Trainual account. And so I would say anytime, if you're sitting there saying, I don't know where to start, I don't have enough hours, and honestly right now I can't afford to hire somebody that's their focus, do not train ever without recording it.
Mm-hmm.
If you do a correction, record it. If you need to go back and review something, record it, because it's free, it's easy, it doesn't take any more time. And if somebody can visually see it, I think it can be super helpful, and they can go, oh, I get it. I read it, but you know, I thought I was supposed to break the spaghetti in half, right? Instead of not doing that, which is obviously what we shouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some good tips. And I've just learned that because I've had to be resourceful with my time. Right now, I'm still in the process of creating the content. So one of the things I'd love us to talk about is, how do you make training effective? I think that's easy, but also fun. And I know Shawn has some fun ideas of how to break up training so people's brains can absorb it. So maybe he could start, and then we could just kind of go down the line.
Yes, one of the things that we learn, we look at how adult human beings learn things, is that our attention spans keep going like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
More and more and more. Kids have longer attention spans than most adults do these days. It's a true fact. You find it. But so and I think a lot of that has to do with what we talked about at the beginning, where, you know, we have experiences, we feel like we know a lot of stuff already, but there are assumptions. Hassan, you mentioned this earlier. We make assumptions about what people know, or what they think they know. And so when we go to do training, we're like, oh, they probably already know this stuff. We'll just get it out there, and then they should know it, and they'll pick it up. But we do need to address that fact that our brains get bored. Our brains get bored very quickly, and especially if you're having people do a lot of things on a computer, it's really, really easy for them to kind of drift off and check their email or do other things like that, right? So one of the things to keep in mind is that when you are delivering and facilitating training, the average adult human being, we have the attention span of about 2 to 7 minutes per learning activity, okay? And a learning activity could be something as simple as a block of text, could be an image, okay? It could be a video. It's just something that changes the way the brain is processing information, right? So if you have something that is more computer-based, maybe there's a block of text, and then you add some kind of a video that illustrates what you've just talked about. One of the things that helps people to internalize information and to gain a skill much quicker, much faster, is when they are able to immediately apply what they've just learned. So a lot of things that I see with standard operating procedures and processes, that there's these long lists of things to do, right? First you do this, next you do this, next you do that, and it's this big long list of stuff, and then at the end they're supposed to know it, right? Where we don't need to approach it that way. That's a great way to approach a manual. But if we're actually training somebody, we need to address how the brain learns. So let's break that up. Maybe take steps 1, 2, and 3 and say, okay, let's focus on these 3 steps. Now let's do some kind of an application activity that helps you to learn this effectively before you move on to the next thing. So we're breaking up those processes and giving them something to do that helps them to internalize it more, and possibly is something that they receive feedback from their mentor or their trainer, right? So I know, Lisa, we talked about recently a guy I worked with who was working with dot loop, right? And they were teaching their teams how to use dot loop, and they had this, first you log in, then you set up the profile, then you'd go this and that and this and that, and it was this 14 steps of things to do. And we had to break things up into like the first 3, which was log in, click on profile, fill out your profile. And then we had an activity. We said, okay, now go fill out your profile, take a screenshot of it, and send it to your trainer, right? So we broke up that really simple process, had them apply something which gave them some muscle memory, some brain and muscle memory. They immediately learned that way faster, way better, and they got to do something with it right away. That will keep the learning stickier. So whenever we're able to break up, I think one of the challenges that we want to get training done as quickly as possible so someone can be, on the job and doing their stuff. But we also have to be mindful that learning is not an event, it's a process, right? So if we can break things up and give them intentional activities that help them to do and to practice what they've just learned, we're going to be way more effective, and we're going to ramp them up actually a lot faster that way than we would if we just said, here, blah, there's all the stuff, right?
Yeah, and he actually had challenged me to go back to my content and add at the beginning, this is what you're going to learn. This is the goal of this. And then teach them what they want to learn. And then this is what you should have learned. And if you didn't, go back and revisit that information. And then something for them to do. So again, a screenshot or send a contract or whatever the learning task was, to actually have them do something as a final, and then working in quizzes and working in photos and making, like, I put in some fun things into mine, and it's not, honestly, it's not the way I learn. So I'm like, that's just a waste of time, right? And yet it's not about me, right? I understand I'm that much of the world, thankfully, right? There's a lot more people that that are not my learning style. And so it is a really good thing to break it up and create that. Anybody else have ways to make it fun or interesting?
Everything that Shawn said, as he was talking, I was taking notes on some of that stuff, because we don't do hardly any of that, right? I think if you take a look at some of the SOPs and things that we have, it's probably more like everyone else's, who is really thoughtful about it and trying to do a good job, but hasn't taken into account the the fun aspect of this. And so one of the things I wrote down, which I'm taking away from this, is learning is not an event, it's a process. Right. And so if you think about it like that, it makes you even more thoughtful about the way you kind of structure the content and the things you put in it to make it sticky. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm taking that.
Yeah, it was fascinating to see his perspective on training and learning, because my old learning used to be a playbook, and I would be like, it's in there, read the instructions, right? and yet I was the only one who loved the playbook. Nobody else loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I learned it actually from Dan Martell, who's involved in Trainual, and I just thought it was the most brilliant thing in the world. And it took me about 5 years to get it perfect. And yet again, I'm the only one who loves it. So that tells you something. Jared, any tips on how we can make this a little bit more fun for everybody in training?
You know, I really like when you started talking about muscle memory and, you know, learning by doing stuff and doing activities. It's easier for me to relate to that from a mechanical or electronic standpoint. And obviously real estate's a little different, but I'm a firm believer on, you know, we've got to get hands-on, we've got to learn. And sometimes those learning opportunities come from, and I don't mean learning from making mistakes out in the real world, but that's the truth, that's usually when our most powerful lessons happen. But if I can get those lessons to be learned by maybe doing some role playing or doing some, like, hey, okay, you're new, let's go through a training procedure on how to write up a contract, and let's write one up. Let's role play it. I'm your client. Let's write up that, you know, so yeah, breaking down those activities, and let's learn by doing. And don't be afraid to mess up. Let's have some laughs about it. Let's have some, you know, a good time doing it. And, you know, I think as you do that, those are when the experiences really start sticking. And, you know, I always kind of, especially I teach not just my team, but more importantly, my kids, is, you know, it's okay to, you know, learn everything and go out there and try it. And if you fail, let's learn from that, because that's probably going to be your greatest, you know, learning experience. And so hopefully that kind of helps, and I got that out of my head the right way. But yeah, it's.
Love it.
Shawn did say very well.
You know, it's interesting. When I make a new hire, I tell them the first 100 days, if you're not failing, we're doing something wrong. Not you're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. Because you know what? You're new. You're going to make mistakes. The goal is to learn from them, right? Yeah. You either learn or you earn. And some of the best lessons come when we have made the mistake. And if we get the lesson, it wasn't a loss, right? It was a win because we picked up the lesson from it. One of the things that I have realized is when you make it fun, it's easier to learn. And I think it's maybe something to do, and Shawn can probably tell us the why behind it, but something to do with the way our brain works, right? You take the pressure off and maybe it then relaxes and it affects the information. But some of I would say the most fun things is when you have a prize, and the prize can be almost nothing, right? But you have a prize, and you know, we did that with listing, like Know Our Listings, and we played listing games, and you know, and it could be a Hershey Kiss as a prize, or it could be a gift card, right? It didn't have to be a big prize, but people were having fun and laughing and trying to win this nothing prize, right? So we do a lot of, we really try to bring prizes into it when we're all together, and ways that we can release the pressure of the brain. And we're learning a very complicated system right now. And I said, we're gonna start every Friday just pulling up and learning together, looking at one of my leads, one of your leads, one of, you know, everybody's team leads. And they said, well, can we wait till we learn this better? And I said, no, this isn't judging. This
Mhm.
is learning, right? There's no judgment in it. I'm not going to be upset if we make a mistake,
Mhm.
right? We're just going to learn together. And some of mine are going to be wrong. And it was just interesting how they immediately went to, oh, I'm going to do it wrong.
Mhm.
Then everybody's going to see it. And I'm probably going to find one of mine that's wrong on purpose so that they see it's okay. We're
Yeah.
going to learn and get better together. Shawn, you have something you'd like
I
to?
love the gamification aspect that you put in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hassan.
No, I was just saying I love the gamification that she put into that learning process.
Yeah, that's why I gave you a high five for that, because
Uh,
so talk about earlier, one of the things I've learned about grown-ups, one of the things we never ever lose in terms of how we like to learn is we always like to have fun.
The play.
It's a game, it's a challenge. We love to be challenged. We want to be challenged, and not necessarily in terms of standardized tests, right?
yes, please no.
We don't want those, but those opportunities where we get to learn and grow together, those are so incredibly valuable. We like to feel like we're on an even playing field, even with our trainer, right? So if we can sit down as a team and we can focus on a chunk of material together and learn it together and make mistakes together, have a fun time about it, get some prizes going, get some competition going. If we're learning things together, we grow, not only in our learning and our skill, but we grow as a team, right? We grow as a group, as an organization. We grow more unified. That we're heading towards the right goal, and that helps in the training because we're all motivated, right? So I
Right.
love that you're gamifying that. That's so powerful.
Well, and even having things like call nights with prizes and call nights with food and all that, because you can just have a call night and everybody rolls their eyes, right? Like, I have to come to the office. Now I don't roll their eyes about coming to the office when we all get out of this. They'll be excited to come back to the office, but I've got to do this. But if you throw a little food and a little beverage in it and some prizes, it becomes a whole different experience. They're not dreading it. They're excited about it, right? And I hear laughter and I hear, it's a whole different thing. And really, what did effort as a leader did that take? It's a pretty nominal effort. It might cost me $50, right? To cause an experience that they dreaded to now is like, oh, I can't wait to go do this. So
Investing in the human capital.
They're not dreading it. They're excited.
Yeah, and that makes a really big difference. Can you hear me, Lisa?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, yeah. So and that makes a really big difference with the approach. One of the things that I'm always trying to get back to is to be more childlike. We talk, me and my wife, Ashley, we talk about that a lot because as we get adults, as like when we're kids, we all, we play and we learn and we have fun. But as we become adults, we get so serious and we become so self-conscious and we become so risk averse, and it drains your energy, right? It really does. And anything like when things are negative and they drain your energy, it's bad for you and it's bad for everyone around you. But if you can get back to play, to fun, to childlike, then that's better. And we do some things like that at work. It's going to be interesting for me to check in with you in a month or so to see how we've implemented that with our training, because right now is a great time for us to hire people. It's a great time. So we're like actually like hiring people now. And so as we bring these new folks on, I'm going to take some of the things that I've learned in like building a good culture and other parts of the company to these new hires. Specifically as they learn more about the product and learn more about the team. And I think for everyone here, it's probably a fantastic opportunity as you think about how you all are bringing people on the team to have like a little training party, to think about how you can improve training together. Because I do think it can become a pretty large task to have all of the training rely on one person, which is why we kind of spread that out a bit in our team too.
Love it. One of the things we're doing in the Passport Experience group is we're saying who has strength in an area. So we have one agent who's a rock star at presenting the listing paperwork. And we did a Zoom webinar. I recorded it and then we've shared it. Now we're going to customize it to our area, our state requirements, that type of thing. But just picking up some of those little things she did, little things she said, and she's not even on my team, right? Yeah. I believe that we all have things that we're really great at training on and maybe some things that we're a little weaker on. Why not as a community come together and share our strengths and then maybe take from someone else's strengths? So we're doing that within Passport because a lot of us said the reason we're not scaling is because of our training or lack thereof. And so I think my challenge for all of those watching, and I'll make this available for all of you guys, you can share it however you would like afterwards. All of those people that are to watch this is just start. You know, I love starting with, okay, what does this person need to know, right? And then maybe start with the thing that's most impactful, like that one thing that's going to help them the most and build it out. But just start and use other people for resources. If you're not great at something, you're not sure, reach out. There's a whole community of people everywhere, right? And just start creating that content. And it's okay to go back and tweak it. I tweaked mine completely after my conversation with Shawn. So any closing remarks from anyone?
You know, Lisa, can I double tap on something you just said?
Yeah, please.
So, this is a really important thing to learn in life. The way to get things done is through focus and personal relationships. Focus and personal relationships. You need both, right? So regardless of how important something is, when I focus on things, they tend to get done, right? Now, I just got to make sure I focus on the right things because I'm like everyone else. I don't always focus on the right things, but when you focus on the thing, it gets done. And personal relationships is important because we have to understand that the thing you hate to do, someone else loves. I throw away my trash. There's a person who literally has devoted his life to collecting other people's trash and has become wealthy doing it. There's trash collect and waste management companies all around the world. What do? They pick up the crap you throw away. They love doing it. They built teams to do it. They focus on how to do it faster, better, quicker. And so there are people in your sphere who you could barter with. If they have something on their team where they have like this deficit and you're great at, similar to the example you just made, Lisa, you could barter with them. Hey, you come train my team on this. I'll train your team on that. Record both of them. And now you've both had an opportunity to do what you love and kind of put to the side something that you don't, but it still gets done.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Jared, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I know Hassan, you just hit on that too, is like understanding those. And the big thing for me on my team is everybody has a why. Everybody has a reason why they're showing up for work. Nobody like wants to be there every single day. And we all make money for a certain reason. We all do it. If we didn't have to have money, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But for me as a leader, and for those that are looking to grow teams, I think the most impactful thing that helped me was understand what my team is, why they're doing what they're doing. Are they doing it to, earn that? Like maybe they're car lovers and they just are, their goal is to get that car. Maybe they have a family and they just have lived in poverty their whole life and they don't want to be there. They don't want to have their family see that again. Whatever those, emotion, I mean, and when you really dig down to the emotions of it and you can start to understand who your employees really are and why they're showing up to work, that was when I could really tap into how I could really help them. Because it might not be as important to me why they're showing up, but it's important enough for them to the point where, they're willing to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And that's my job as a leader, is to help them achieve that goal. It's not to help them sell more homes. It's not to help them, be successful in real estate, but it's to help them close that gap of why they are working as hard as, because everybody's willing to lay down their life for something enough that they will give you that hustle. And if you can figure that out, then you've got some great employees behind you.
Love it. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you guys all day. Somebody texted me and said, how long is the webinar? And I said 6 hours. And I said, just kidding. I'm like, it could be, and yet it's not going to be. I said, maybe there'll be a round 2 on this. What I'd love to see, and if everybody on here, I'd love to see everybody start. If you have no training, start, because then we can maybe do, 2.0 or something. But we need to have at least a start on this, and then we can take it up to the next level. Because it's interesting. I love that Hassan was taking notes, right?
Yeah.
A great teacher is a great learner. And we all can learn, and we can all take that one thing that takes it to the next level. And you're not going to go from here to here, right? It's a process. So let's just start. Let's make our training about what Jared just said, right? Our goal is to help that person get their why, right? And if we can do that, that's why we're a leader, I think. It's not just because, money, deals, whatever. Honestly, it was easier when it was just me, when I was a sole agent. And so I don't do it for that. I don't do it for money. I do it for opportunities that I'm creating for my clients and my team. So thank you for ending that on that note, Jared. I think that was a perfect place to end. I am so honored that you all said yes and shared your amazing insight. I know this is going to help a lot of people, those that were on the call and those that see it after. And I am very appreciative and thankful for all of you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Have a great day, and hopefully we're all, I don't know if we'll have normal again, but the new normal maybe. So, all right. Thanks everybody.
Have a good day. See you later.
Bye.